welcome to Choosing Acceptance podcast with your host, Marie Mason. I am here to share some success stories and tips on how to overcome your learning disability so that you can turn your talents into a career. And I love to inspire children and parents and teachers with learning disabilities to go beyond their limits so that they can make a bigger impact in the world. Schedule a call to become a guest on our show at calendly.com/Marie V. Mason. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Choosing Acceptance podcast. I am your host, Marie Mason, and we have a special guest that I'm excited to share with you. And we've been just rambling off right before the show, so she's ready to share as well. So I can't wait to have you hear from her. Her name is Rosemary O Shaughnessy, and her background includes digital content manager supporting adults with dyslexia. I hope I got that right, Rosemary. Did I get it right? Because I wasn't quite sure.
I support adults with dyslexia, simplify things, and for adults with dyslexia who are in business.
Brilliant. And you're from Ireland, which is one of my favorite places to go visit because I went there back in the 80s and absolutely loved it. And at some point would like to go back. So anyway, hopefully we'll get to meet. But anyway, that's a future topic for a later date. But one of the things that you solve is basically helping people, empowering dyslexic business owners to create content to help them and their business thrive, which is a great resource that we all need. And today's topic is leading like a boss, how to navigate a neurodivergent minds that can thrive and take charge, which is very important mindset. But before we bring up my lovely guest, we are going to actually do the top tips of the week. And I am going to just focus on this week's topic, which is the 3 resources for dyslexia. We have talked a lot about dyslexia the first 4 episodes, or maybe 5 episodes, just to catch everybody up in speed. So please go look at the first 4 episodes, and that will give you a lot of information about what dyslexia is, what to look for, and some solutions for that, and maybe even some more other resources. I wanted to share some other resources because I know Rosemary and I share a common bond about helping people with dyslexia. So let's begin discussing the top 3 resources for individuals with dyslexia, and I'll try to keep it short and brief. The first resource mentioned, from what I've seen in my research, is the International Dyslexia Association, IDA for short, which offers extensive support and resources for both children and adults with dyslexia, which is great for people who are in either one of those spectrums in that age range. So they provide information, articles, and publications on various aspects of dyslexia, as well as organized conferences, training programs, and International Dyslexia Association. So if you want to go and speak on there to that kind of association, Rosemary, and people would like to speak, that's a possibility for you as well. So it might be a good one. Now, I don't know where they're located, so you might want to go on their website at dyslexia.org and see where they're located and where they offer all these different kinds of training programs and conferences. So just a little tip for you guys. And then the second resource is Learning Alley, which is a nonprofit organization that offers audiobooks and other educational resources specifically designed to support individuals with dyslexia. And they also provide personalized assessments and training for parents and educators, which is very valuable for both spectrums. And then it's also found at learningalley.org. The third resource is Understood, and that's actually the name of it, just to make sure I'm clear. And it's an online platform that offers information, tools, and supports for individuals with learning and attention differences. So if you have like attention deficit disorder, along with dyslexia, for example, that would be a great resource for both. and they provide articles and videos and practical tips, as well as access to experts in a community of individuals who share experiences. So if you want some support from a community, that would be a good place to get some good support. That's literally in simple website, understood.org. How simple can you be? So I love it when they keep it simple. I don't know about anyone else, but the next quick tip I'm going to share, I know I only said 3, but there's a quick one. We actually had our first guest named Jen Para. She's actually in the United States, and she has a dyslexia resource center available to everybody in the U.S. and I think abroad as well. And you can contact her. Her information is on our first podcast. And I think it was Redefining Dyslexia was the name of the podcast. So if you go to choosing acceptance podcast channel and type in either Jen Para or Redefining Dyslexia, or episode 1, you will find her on there as well. So please go and check her out. She is a wonderful young lady who I say loosely because I say everyone's young at heart. So, but she's got a lot of gifts and a lot of resources, and she would be a great person to also connect with as well because she could get you set up. Overall, these resources are aimed to provide information, support, and practical tools for individuals with dyslexia, as well as guidance for parents, educators, and professionals who are working with them. And before we bring up our speaker today, here's a word from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back after this commercial break. I'm Marie Mason. I am a business strategy coach. I run a mastermind group for online business owners where our members get to network, collaborate, and learn from one another in an exclusive environment. Our Business Academy takes a modern approach to business solutions by incorporating the latest technology and strategies to ensure that you hire a qualified team to handle your workflows. Okay, now we're back. So, really, really quick, I just want to make sure to welcome you back and say I'm super happy to have our next guest here, which is Rosemary Shaughnessy. And let me recap. Her background includes digital content manager and also supporting adults with dyslexia. And all the way from Ireland. So I really appreciate you being here at this time because it's probably afternoon or evening for you when we're doing it around lunchtime around us. So in the US. So and the main problem that you solve is helping to empower dyslexic business owners to create content to help their business thrive. And I think that's admirable because we all need that extra support. So today's topic is leading like a boss, how neurodivergent minds can thrive and take charge. So let's bring up Rosemary. And how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. And you are right, it is actually evening time.
So I wasn't too far.
It's 6 o'clock in the evening.
I was mixing up. I had a call where the person who was hosting it was in Australia. He's my business partner, and I worked with him for so many years, and I should know when he says one day, it's really the previous day for me, and at a different time. Because we're like 15 hours apart right now when we change the time in November, and I always forget, and I'm like, I should know this. So I'm glad I didn't get yours wrong, at least. So that's good. So that's
no,
awesome.
You did very well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm trying to get better at that because I talk with enough people on a regular basis. We talk pretty frequently, so it helps to know and remember all that, the time differences. So
yeah, it does simplify things.
Yeah, exactly. So my first question for you, if you're ready, is how neurodivergent minds can thrive and take charge, because we're talking about leading like a boss. And really, that's really my first question. And then we'll go into each question after you get a chance to explain that.
When I thought about that, I thought about Manpower International did some research, and they were actually doing it about dyslexics, and they were doing it about the workforce, like how dyslexics can contribute. And there were several skill sets that are very important for business that Manpower International highlighted as the top skills. Those things are leadership. And that was one of them, which obviously is very important in the world of AI, because AI, we know, can do certain things, but we need the human element to pull it all together. And also we need leaders who will motivate staff, get things done, inspire. So that was one of the things they said. Another thing they said, critical thinking, that dyslexics had that as a skill. And also think about it. If you are a dyslexic and certain things are more difficult, you actually find ways around it. And with that, another thing they found out, dyslexics were curious. Now, think of the world economy now. There's an awful lot of things are happening. And if you're in business and things aren't going great for whatever reason, if someone is curious, they can discover new opportunities. Think about the tech companies. I did a podcast myself with IBM. And again, they have actually a program for their neurodiverse employees that is led by the neurodiverse employees. And that is from the accountant to all kinds of staff. Creativity. And they also discovered that dyslexics are very adaptable. Now, that is very understandable, because when things aren't completely straightforward for you, what happens is you have to adapt. So, for example, one thing happens to many dyslexics, they can have a challenge with directions. So they can have different ways of adapting to find a way to go somewhere. So it can be just something as simple as that. But they are all very important qualities that business need now and going forward. And there's been a lot of research done about the future of work. What skills are needed in the future? And technology, okay, most people love it or hate it. They find it can be great, it can do things, but also it changes the whole time. And people don't always like that. But working together, technology can help dyslexic not to have to struggle on the things that are challenges, so they can focus on their strength and they can lead. And there's loads of examples of that in business. Richard Branson will be one, for example, in business.
That's good. Yeah, I was just putting some notes in the chat for us so I can have it, not have to keep the thing back and forth to our notes. So I could focus. That's good. So then, and I really agreed with that. 100%. And I can't figure out where I was going with that. So I'm going to go on to the next question. If it comes back to me, I'll come back and we'll visit that. So what kind of accommodations and a support can help neurodivergent individuals thrive in leadership positions? Because we all learn differently. We all, like you were indicating earlier, we all think different. We all have different ways of doing things and thinking differently. What would you suggest?
There's all kinds of things. Like I create websites for business owners and, work with people with dyslexia. Now, if you think of it, you're a businessman and you decide you have a great idea, loads of dyslexic great ideas, imagination. But then if someone turned around and said, I want you to do all these pages and I want these long documents and whatever, what can happen to many dyslexic is they get just overwhelmed, and it can take all the momentum away. It can slow up the project and nobody gains. But quite often that person can give really, really good instructions if they use video or audio. So what I would say is don't focus on what is, if you don't even using different tools to write, if that still causes you stress and overwhelm, like for example, I use Loom because I have clients who, like I can think of one as we talk, and if I send him a text or an email, whatever, I know he scans it. He mightn't admit it, but I know he scans it. He doesn't read it. And if I properly, then I could do something, then he could send it back again because he's not reading. Where if I make him a video and say, this is what I've done, have a look, he does it. And it's all done once instead of a few times. Then again, we dyslexics like talking. A lot of them are great talkers. Instead of struggling, say typing, whatever, there are tools for audio and, dragging and all different tools there. So you can use technology, voice to text, which again saves time, because not only with typing and all these and producing written form, when we actually do work within our strengths, just to give you a very simple example, recently I was speaking, or someone contacted me, and actually they gone back to college. And they were a mature student, and they were told, do a presentation in Canva. And they'd never heard of Canva. They had a big panic. So I asked them, show me what you've done. And their mind was very kind of text orientated. They showed me what they'd done, but they had a huge problem converting that to a visual form. Now, my brain would be the opposite. I would create something visual, and then I have to go. So I actually got her to do what she could do herself. Then I actually showed her and taught her how to convert it to a visual form. And that worked for her brain, where in my brain, complete opposite. I would have started by seeing all the visuals, the colors and all, and then I would have organized the thoughts. Another thing, if you're working as a team, if you are leading, it's very important to understand how people communicate. And there's lots of technology can help you there, because if you're trying to get something done, and like say Maria and me are doing something together, it's 6 o'clock in the evening for me, it's earlier in the day for her. So obviously if she started firing something at me now, I'm not going to be at my best because it's the end of the day. So there's loads of tools there where you can schedule. If it is your email, you can see when somebody opens an email, so you know when is the best optimum time to communicate with people, so they are at their best, and you're also not causing stress and overwhelm. Then as well is, we all have priorities during our day and things we have to focus on. So again, there are tools for managing, like I would say, that which ones suit all of us are the project management tools. So again, and how different tools are laid out, because a lot of dyslexics, for instance, are very visual. I remember things by color. So if I have a priority, I color code things, and I can use Trello and all different kind of tools there. I use HubSpot for my emails. It really depends what you're trying to achieve. So everyone's different. So what I would say is, if you're a dyslexic adult, you're a leader and you're in business, ascertain what are your weaknesses or what do you need help with. Is it that you find it very hard to organize your day and how to schedule your day? Do you find it very hard to time yourself doing things? I use my hours because I find that very handy, because I can time myself and I can see how quickly I'm doing something or not doing something, so I can keep me productive that way. So there's all kind of different ways we can find. If it is you need keeping projects on track, that would be project management tools. So it's a huge variety, but it depends on the individual person. I do a podcast separately, and my co-hosts, their brain works. They love mind maps and all that kind of things. I don't like mind maps. Some dyslexic love mind maps or things like Meister to do things like that. So again, it is, what are you trying to achieve? You know, what are your strengths? How do you think? How do you think? Because if you kind of think about those things, then you can think of, now I need to go and check out. It is project management tool. It is an organize. It is about timing. It is, even if it is something to help you, directions, or there's all kinds of different issues different people with dyslexia have. There's not one size fits all. So they're the main things to keep in mind.
Brilliant. No, I love it. So I took a little notes and I put a little side notes because I wanted to remember some of the stuff so I wouldn't forget. But that was really well put. So I'm going to focus on mentioning something about what we just spoke about, and then I'm going to piggyback to the first question because I had one little comment on that one. Now that I remember what it was, sometimes you have to have that little memory trigger. That makes sense. So really, really quickly, I really liked how you described about prioritizing your day with using tools can help us with our daily tasks and staying on track. And that's spot on. I loved how you were talking about your strengths, working with your strengths and your weaknesses, because that's something I focus on in my book series as well in my podcast. So it's quite accurate. And I feel like you need to work within your strengths, focus less on your weaknesses, but fill in your weaknesses with using either tools or maybe working with someone like yourself who's a coach, or myself, because we're both coaches in our own way. But I also, we do different things. So whatever coach works for you, that works best for you, is who you should be working with on helping you with both your strengths and your weaknesses. Because some people, when they're dealing with a learning difficulty or learning disability like dyslexia, might not know all their strengths and weaknesses, because they might hear more about what their weaknesses are and less about their strengths. So it's always good to highlight people's strengths. And I agree with that. So, don't really have a specific question on question 2. I was just saying I liked how you talked about how they learn and communicate, and the way that you described everything was on point. So I kind of just summarized question 2. But I did have a side note for question 1, which was about, you mentioned about the AI tools, and you also mentioned it on this section too. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, but you said you mentioned how AI tools need humans to polish up that written content and focus on and I was added in about putting your voice into it. And I think what it is, you had says something, how they don't do critical thinking and analysis, and they don't have the human features that we have. So it's hard to, so they can't put it in your voice because it's a tool. It learns. So as you keep using that tool, they will eventually pick up on your voice and they'll start putting things into your voice. But at the beginning, and when you use an AI tool, you're not going to get that right away. You have to train it, kind of like a dog. You have to train it. But
and also another area is they're not always accurate.
Yeah.
You do need to have knowledge yourself. Just to give an example, out of curiosity, I was doing something about post inspector on LinkedIn. And remember, I come from a website background, but basically post inspector is a tool LinkedIn have to show you how your website would display and if there's bugs and all, recommendations, how you deal with it. So out of curiosity, I put it into an AI tool to see it was ChatGPT, and they did not know what it was. They came back with writing a LinkedIn post, if you were doing a post for your newsfeed. I was speaking to a client actually, and they had put something in about their own business, and it gave actually very, very bad advice because in their particular business, there are laws about data management and how you actually can share information about people and everything. And my client was telling me the information they gave about their particular business and the laws it was actually wrong. And that's very, very serious. So they're there as a guide. They're there, if you're a dyslexic and all of a sudden you have to go and produce a report and all that kind of thing. That's great because it can give you a framework to get started. But you have to go and do your work. That has not changed. And also, don't become so reliant that you forget how to do things yourself, because also tools can break. They can get overloaded. All kinds of things with these tools.
Yeah. Update. Yeah, they get updated. So yeah, you get stuck if they're updating and you have to do something and you have to find another tool to use. Yeah. So
yeah. And they're using a lot more bandwidth as well. And there's all kinds of different things with all this. So I think in some ways it is a very positive thing, but in other ways it depends what you're trying to do. And for business, they need to take into account of if you put everything through AI and then you go off and you say, this is original content, it's gone through AI, and then you try and charge an awful lot to your customer, whatever it is, that is not original. It's gone into the system, if you want to call it. And then if someone found it themselves in the system and you charge an awful lot, they wouldn't be very happy.
Right.
So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, you have to do a plagiarism check. Some of the AI software out there will offer a plagiarism check, and I actually prefer to use the plagiarism check, and that's why I say to people the same thing you do: go back and edit it, because you don't want it to be exactly like it, because they might use more complicated words than you would in an average conversation. So you have to keep your audience in mind when you're doing these different written copies from the AI chats. So you always have to make sure you go in and edit, proofread, and change it around a little bit so it's not exact. Because if you do it exactly like that text, it's not going to come across to your audience. It's not going to be relatable to your audience. And that's the whole focus of writing, right? To relate to your audience. So I think that's a valid point. Yeah. So. Why don't we
And you
move on?
miss a lot of the cultural things as well, I find.
True. Yeah.
How you would describe stuff culturally, a lot of it is just very general, and it misses a lot of that.
Right. That's why I'm saying you have to put in your voice. You have to put in, you have to add the personality to it. Because AIs are great for brainstorming if you're stuck. Like if you're having one of those mental blocks when you're writing and you have to write blog posts, newsletters, and whatever else kind of content, books or whatever, it's great for brainstorming and breaking through that piece. But then you have to sift through that information it gives you and make sure you piece it together so it makes sense. And like we said earlier, make those edits and make sure you do not do it exactly because you don't want to infringe on copywriting, which is why it's important that you read through, proofread, or have someone proofread with you and make sure that it gets written properly so that it's not all AI, but it has part of you in there as well. Because you want to be able to hit your target audience, whether it's a cultural thing or whatever. You just want to make sure you focus in on that. So I think we've discussed that topic in great detail. So I'm ready to move on to the next one. I don't know about you, but the next one is, how does creating more inclusive, that is inclusive workplace benefit not just the neurodivergent individual, but everyone? I had to slow down to make sure I enunciated some of these words. So, because there's some long words in there. So, could you explain that for us?
Yeah, very much so. Like, if you think about it, if someone doesn't feel included, they will not put themselves forward firstly in a workspace. Think about that. If someone has a talent, but they just feel they're not part of the party, then who loses out? The business loses out. Then if you don't feel included, what happens? You're much more likely to have mental illness. Oxford University did research, and they found when we actually are happy at work, we're 13% more productive. So that kind of principle of making a workplace inclusive, where people are taught to accept people and understand people, that actually makes a much more positive workplace for everyone to work. And when people are in a positive setting, like as the Oxford University research, then people will do more to achieve and to thrive. And they'll be much more open to learning things and improve. Because if you feel you are going to be criticized, you are going to be put down because you go and you learn something, maybe you have an interest and learn something that isn't just mainstream, but it could still have benefit for the business. But if you really feel I am going to be criticized, you won't do it. I was at an interesting event with LinkedIn. I'm a certified LinkedIn insider, and it was about this subject about inclusivity at work. And one area they discussed, which obviously for their business made a lot of sense, it was about producing content. Because if you produce content and you make it that it is hard to understand for a whole variety of people. For example, dyslexics don't read as quick as others. So we've all seen subtitles after the end of a film or whatever, and they can be too quick and people can't process. But if things are made unfriendly, people don't process the information, don't have the benefit. And then if you don't have the benefit of the information, you won't take action. And LinkedIn were doing exclusive training for people like me about the importance of this. And then it's not just dyslexia, because people, for instance, might have eyesight problems. Someone might have had a stroke, and then all of a sudden they're not processing information. as quickly. So the more we can think of how to be inclusive, how to accept people, then to find out how to bring it all together that encourages people, inspires people, that they will actually take action. So they will achieve, they will lead. It will make a much more positive world. But then there's the other side of it. That's, I will call it the mental side, or I don't know, from that perspective. But there's also the physical side. Like, for example, some people with neurodiverse can be a bit clumsy or can be perceived. And if you're clumsy, you're not as intelligent and all this kind of stuff. So obviously to have a workplace that is safe from the physical perspective, because if people are put under physical stress, that equally can tie over to the mental stress and the problems. So a lot of this is common sense of, good work, best practices of what the needs for everyone. And if the needs for everyone being accepted and all these kind of things are met, and tools and everything to make it easier for people to do their work, then people will do a lot more, achieve a lot more. Then there'll be more interest in the work, more vibrant, and everyone gains that way.
It's true. Yeah, I think you did a beautiful job about that, because one of the reasons why I left certain jobs was I felt like I was criticized, that I didn't feel inclusive. I felt like a trophy wife sometimes, meaning I was, not to be sounding like it was a negative situation, but I just felt like I was one of the few, for an example, there's been a couple places I've worked with in the last 20 years, and where I would actually, one of the few white people in a predominantly Black or mixed community. And I felt like sometimes I was singled out because I had skills. People were jealous of me because I had those skills, but I spent years working on them. And I felt like sometimes it was a very toxic environment. Like they weren't creating that positive environment you mentioned. And I'll be honest, if you're not creating that positive environment for your clients or people that you work with on your team, they're not going to be willing to work with you. So that's one of the reasons why I left a couple of my jobs. 2 or 3 of my jobs actually was because the environment was so toxic that it was making me so stressed that I couldn't perform at my best because I was worried about who was going to do what when, you know what I mean, instead of trying to focus on my work. And that's why being inclusive rather than, the opposite, or something in my example, for example, that just, it's much better when everybody has a positive experience, because that makes them want to work with you on a longer term scale. It doesn't mean they're going to work with you forever necessarily, but they're more likely to stick with you if it's a good positive environment. So I think my best success with anybody I work with on my team, or working with anybody else's team, because I do belong to other people's groups too. And so I help a business partner out, for example. So I belong to his team, but I also have my own team. He's part of that team as well. So in both cases, we're in the same situation. We tried to make it inclusive. We tried to make it positive. We tried to make it uplifting and support each other. We, if someone posts a video, we go and support it. You know what I mean? If somebody does a comment, we support each other's stuff, as well as helping towards a common goal on the person's business. So that's kind of a good way to be inclusive and also to be supportive. But if you're not going to be supportive or having a positive atmosphere, or be inclusive, you're going to have a very big turnaround in your team members or the people that you work with as clients or students or whatever it is that you do for your business. So I totally understand where you're going with that. So creating that positive work environment is key, no matter who you're working with. And that's whether you're working online or in person, because some of those in-person job environments are not always the best places to work with. So I get exactly what you're saying. So I appreciate that. So I want to go and I just want to give you an example of that because I felt like that situation was very relatable. Next question, because I feel like we're already well over the 30-minute mark, so we're going to have to kind of speed it up a little bit, but because I don't want to take too much more of your time. But the next question is, why is overcoming stigma and misconceptions surrounding neurodivergence conditions crucial for creating an inclusive workplace? That's a tongue twister. So can you explain that, please?
Oh, one very simple one that really comes to mind, that with stigma, if people feel stigma, they again won't put themselves forward. And there's an awful lot of misconceptions about the likes of dyslexia, that people aren't intelligent. People are, most people with dyslexia are average to above average intelligence. So if you have all people with these kind of talents and they feel stigma, what happens? Number one, you could be stigma quite often ties in with being bullied. What happens if you have been bullied? You're less likely to put yourself forward. You can have challenge achieving things, and there is a huge price. Also, when these things happen, people slip out of the education system, like here in Ireland, but I could imagine America is quite similar. 7 out of 10 of the prison population are neurodiverse.
Wow.
And think about that. That is, if you have slipped out of the education system because it's not helping you learn, and you are clever and that kind of thing, then if someone comes and says, this is the way you can do things, you can be distracted by the wrong people and the wrong circumstances. So stigma has a huge price if it comes to on a personal level, for people not feeling included, feeling they have to focus on the things that are a challenge, which if you're overwhelmed, feel you have to spend your life doing what you can't do well, instead of focus on what you can do well and thrive. That stigma is causing a whole load of problems. And then there's even, if you think of that staff for prisons and things like that, think about the cost for the health service, because then if you get enough stress, you could get depressed and you could end up getting health care for all those kind of things. So it is very, very important that we fight the stigma. We create awareness, and it's not, I personally do not like these things that say, oh, dyslexia is a superpower. Yes, you can have brilliant talents as a dyslexic, but you also have the other side of the coin, the challenges. And we're kind of getting into a remit of, it's all wonderful. No, it's not wonderful if you're trying to go somewhere and you get lost and you happen to go to the wrong area and it's dangerous or whatever it is. That's not wonderful. Now, it is wonderful when you are very, very talented at some things, when you can focus on that. So stigma is something that any stigma is not good for people and it's not good for society. So we all should be our knowledge, we should be sharing it. We should be sharing the positives to help fight stigma and help fight younger people having the stigma that past generations had to manage and suffered as a consequence in so many ways.
Now, I agree. One of the things about my children's book and my podcast series is about choosing acceptance. It's about, yeah, exactly what you said, creating awareness, making sure that we should focus on the positives and less on the stigma of what is the negatives. It doesn't mean that we ignore the negatives. Sorry, I do have people who love to call me at the most inappropriate times. But anyway, so I'm putting it on silent. So really quickly, it's exactly what I have been putting in my children's book. It's all about focusing on their talents and what they can do. It's about bringing awareness about, why we're giving a stigmatization, why we are labeling. I call it labeling too. We label everything, right? We label learning disability, dyslexia. We label this, that to define what that is. I'm thinking in my mindset, and this is why I'm writing the books and doing the podcast and bringing awareness. And that is, let's shift the mindset and focus on less on labeling and just redefining everything. Because I feel like we have gone from one extreme to another when it comes to putting a label on it or creating a stigmatization, making a stigma about something that's like dyslexia. So in order to create an inclusive environment, a positive environment, let's bring awareness, let's bring a positive spin, let's focus more on what everyone can do and bring in their strengths that they can contribute. It does not mean we don't work on our weaknesses, but it's not the focal point, which is something you had said something similar to. And I thought that was just very much related to what I'm doing as well. So thank you for sharing that point, because I feel like it really highlights what it is I'm trying to accomplish as well. So I think that's why we got along so well. So it's a passion for both of us. And it's not, for me, it's not just one thing. It's not just dyslexia. It's like any learning difficulty anyone has. But it's people with learning difficulties. They have a different way of thinking and processing information. And I've had people make the mistake of saying, oh yeah, we all are dyslexic or we're all learning disabled. And we're like, not really. We might have some traits, but we're not all learning disabled. What it is we all learn differently. We all process information differently. And I wanted to make that misconception corrected, because people have a different way of saying things, but they're trying to relate to you in some ways, but they're not completely understanding it, and they're missing the mark when they make statements like, oh yeah, we're all learning. It's not that you're all learning disabled. You think differently than we do. You process information differently than we do. When I was studying to write my book, the first one, which is Bubblebear Special Problem, I did a little research, and actually they did a study at one of the schools. Don't ask me which one. Study was done in the early to mid 90s. So I couldn't even remember the research and which one it was located if I wanted to in the 2023. But the long story short of it is, I actually remember they did the study and they showed the differences of a regular person's brain that wasn't having a learning difficulty and one with a dyslexic's brain. And they saw where the dyslexic's brain looked different when they did one of those CAT scans and stuff, and they showed the little pictures of it. And then they showed how it looked different than a normal human brain. So it proves that we do process information differently, and that our brains think differently. And I did a big, huge study on the human brain back when I was in college. It was one of the few places that actually had it at the time. And then I think it became a regular afterwards. But it was all about the big deep dive discussion and details about the human brain. No, I'm not going to give you too much detail about that topic today, but I'm just saying it's just, but I just want to say I found the study pretty, when I saw the differences between the dyslexic brain and the regular human brain, it really kind of clicked that even though I don't think it's just dyslexia, I think other people with other learning difficulties would probably see something similar, like the brain would look differently to that than a regular person's brain. And I think that's why it's hard for people who are not having a learning disability to really see the viewpoint of a dyslexic or anyone with a learning difficulty in that respect. I mean, we probably don't have time to get into that details because we're pretty late getting onto this call, but it's been a delightful conversation. We need to move forward, but I just wanted to share that. And if you want to make
Thank you very much.
If you want to make a quick comment on that, you're welcome to, and then we'll go on to question 5, and then we have 2 last questions to wrap up with. So, did you want to add to that real quick, or?
No, really, what is a regular person? If we want to talk about it, there's no such thing because we're all unique. And people process information very, very differently. People observe things. Like 2 people could go for a walk and one person will notice whatever, and another person will notice other things. So the big thing is you can never take for granted that because you're very strong at something or weak at something, the other person is. You have to have an open mind. Don't presume, especially if you're teaching someone. Because people might be too shy to say, look, sorry, I don't understand this. You have to be able to get the body language, all the cues is be observant, listen and watch people. Because we do not always want to say where our challenges are. And that is for regular people just as much as people in the neurodiverse community.
Exactly. But I wanted to get your opinion on that because, like I said, it was an eye-opener for me. And I think that we have a much more better understanding of it than we did even back in the 90s. So that's why I wanted to get your thoughts on that. So I'm glad you wrapped that up so nicely. So the next question is, how can an inclusive culture be created in the workplace to empower neurodivergent individuals? I'm having a tongue twister moment today.
An inclusive culture is teaching people to accept people. Because people don't wear a sticker, I've dyslexia. They don't wear a sticker, I've had a stroke. They're both brain things, okay? So if we don't know people are whatever they are, or an epileptic, all the different things people can have, then accommodations aren't made. Then people have struggles. Then as a consequence of these struggles, you have a whole load of problems. And they're problems that cost money to business because ultimately, quite often, the consequence of them can be absenteeism from work. It can be bullying people by not understanding. And some of the things can be just not even about being neurodiverse. People's own personal prejudice. I did an interview with the global lead with IBM, and she told the story about they have a course in IBM about neurodiversity. And this employee came over and said about this person's neurodiverse, and of all the things, he basically took his shoes off when he was working, he took his shoes off.
Wow.
A lot of us slip our shoes off. I think we do. And this person came to their boss and said, this person slips their shoes off. And the boss said, does his feet smell? No, his feet don't smell. Does he not do his job? Oh, he does his job. It had no consequence. And then when it was said, when it got the other person thinking, oh, it doesn't really matter. We have to learn tolerance, understanding, because that's not even about neurodiversity. I think it probably is personality, we have to learn acceptance, because by learning acceptance, then we can all learn, and then we can help each other succeed. And that is what we want to see. And does that answer your question or explain?
Yeah, it definitely ties up nicely, and we'll definitely wrap it up with that. So I really, really appreciate that, because it's spot on. It ties, like I said, it just ties everything up perfectly. So why don't we go on to the last couple of questions and to get ready to wrap up, because I know we've been at it for a little longer than I planned today, but it was valuable information. So really quickly, can you give us like one short takeaway point that's related to the topic? It's not a call to action, by the way. Just one quick tip that people can take away from today's session, like a summary point almost.
Yeah, what I would say is simplify. Everything, as much you can do. If things are simple, you don't feel overwhelmed and you can keep going. And so even if it is you're going to do something, have a few simple action steps. Don't get caught up in this internet world of Google that, oh, I am brilliant at everything, I can do everything. Because if you try and do everything, you don't actually focus enough to become really good at anything. So then you don't build your confidence. And so just simplify, and things become simpler when you actually focus on certain skills, because you understand those things. And when there's a problem, if you have focused and you simplify things, you are better equipped to deal with problems when they come. And life has curveballs for all of us. And the more things we have, like you think of us as a juggler, the more balls we have juggling around, and the more complicated we let things be, the harder it is to keep those balls, juggle those balls when something unexpected happens. Because unexpected happens. Like this week, I driving the car and we had a storm and 2 trees fell down. It wasn't the best scenario. That was unexpected. But I was prepared in a way, because thank God I wasn't driving too quick. So you always have to allow for the unexpected. And so keep things as simple as possible. Also, by keeping things simple, there's another great thing about that is it means you can delegate. You can get people to do things for you if you don't make things too complicated. But if you make things complicated, obviously it makes it an awful lot harder for people to do things for you or be motivated to do things for you if they feel, oh no, that person makes life so complicated and difficult.
Right. And people tend to play those stories in their heads to make things sound more complicated. And we're just encouraging you to kind of focus on what you can do, focus less on those like negative type stories, and then focus more on the positives of what you can do, because it's all about moving forward. It's all about making sure you create a life for yourself and not like you said, not overwhelming yourself is key. So I have a last question for you, and that is, do you have something to offer our audience for today? I know you had a little surprise for everybody.
Now, the easiest thing, if anyone needs my help, is you'd contact me at adultdyslexiasupport.com. You have all the details there. And then what I would do is I'd do a discovery call. I'll have a chat with you. And from there, we work out what you need, how you need help. And at that stage, I'd be more than happy to give you a surprise as well.
Brilliant. And you're great with all the little tips and tricks, and you were helping me before the call. So I really appreciate all your extra time today. And I hope that you could come back, because I feel like this is a very important topic to address. And there's all sorts of topics we can probably touch on that's related to neurodivergent. I have got to learn to remind myself to slow down when I actually say that. So, but it's a great topic, and it's definitely an important one. And I think today people definitely got some good information and clarity about that topic. So I appreciate you being here, and I hope people take advantage of your gift, because Rosemary is awesome to talk with and got great information, as well as can give you some awesome resources. So definitely check her out. And I am going to pretty much wrap up today's show. And it's been a great, great topic called How Neurodivergent Minds Can Thrive and Take Charge. And it's all about focusing on leadership, because you can still thrive and be neurodivergent. You just have to know what kind of tools you have access to, and you have to know what your gifts and talents are and focus on what you can do. And I think if people would do more of that, they can have a lot more success in their business. So I want to, like I said, also encourage you to check out our channel. Please make sure you like, share, and comment. We always check everything on a regular basis. So you are going to be very glad to also check out Bubble Bear's Special Problem. And it's all about destigmatizing learning disabilities and helping people provide a better understanding and embracing their learning process. So definitely go check that out. It's all about bringing awareness as well. So go check that out. It's on Amazon. It's also what's the other one? It's also on the Barnes & Noble website. And I also saw it recently on the Walmart website. So go check those out. It's not in stores yet. We're working on getting it on the store shelves, hopefully soon, hopefully by Christmas. So take a look at those. And also, if you would like to have some free resources from today, make sure you join our community. We have a Bubble Bears Books membership free Facebook group, which people like Rosemary are welcome to join, and our audience as well. So if you want support from a community, a positive and community, sorry, I'm not able to speak at the end of the show. So bear with me. But long story short, if you want to join our free community and get some support and some information and resources, I'm going to start posting more of that in there for you all as well. So until next time, I am your host, Marie Mason from the Choosing Acceptance podcast. Here is one of our words from our sponsors, and have a great week, everyone. And that ends this week's show. And bye from me and Rosemary. Thank you all.
Bye, and thank you very much, Marie. It was a pleasure. I look forward to talking again.
Thank you. I look forward to it too. Cheers. My name is Marie Mason. I am the author of Bubble Bear Special Problem. And this book destigmatizes learning disabilities in order to provide a better understanding of their learning process. It helps children to overcome their fear of learning disabilities so that they can contribute their talents by bringing awareness to how children should be treated in and out of the classroom. If you would like more to learn about this book, then go to Amazon.com and check out Bubble Bear Special Problem by Marie Mason.